Have you ever wondered what it would be like to sell everything and travel around in an RV? Well, today we're going to learn all about doing that. Welcome back to the Crack the Code podcast. And today we're going to be chatting with Kathy Davis. She is a plant-based lifestyle and mindset coach, the CEO of Veginspired, and the author of 3 cookbooks. And currently, Kathy and her husband, John, are living their plant-based dream while simultaneously traveling the United States in an RV with their cat. They've been to 29 states, 20 national parks so far, and have a goal to visit all the U.S. national parks. That's so cool. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Cora. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you because I know a lot of people dream of doing that, of, selling all their stuff and living in an RV and living the life. And I know there's a lot more to it than that. So I'm happy to have you sharing with everybody in case they've been thinking about doing something like that, what they need to do, what they need to look forward to, what they need to worry about. And I know you've got a lot of good info you can share with everybody.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. So maybe you can take us back and, how did this nugget of, how did that thought process go with you and your husband to say, like, who was kind of the first one to say, man, should we do something like this? Like, were you just sitting around one night and just decided, or how did that work?
It actually was very much what you just described, sitting around one day, and the idea kind of came out of other ideas. So I have a YouTube channel where I film recipe videos, and we were looking at renovating our kitchen. And then we ended up selling our house and moving into an RV. But the process to get there was very exploratory. Did we really want to renovate this house, or did we want to buy a new house, or maybe we wanted to buy property? And then it became, well, if we bought property, what if we bought a small house with a really nice kitchen and did a nice outdoor space that we could film? And so everything, we just let our minds kind of wander and just dream a little bit about what was possible. Even if at the time it seemed extremely impossible, we just let the ideas flow. And somehow we stumbled upon the idea of an RV. And the idea, I suppose, came after a trip. We took a weekend trip to Chicago from Pittsburgh, and we went to a lot of vegan restaurants, and we had such a great time. But when we got back, it was back to the old grind, right? Back to the 9-to-5 jobs, back to the lifestyle that we had, which was 2 working adults living in a house with a mortgage, with cats. We had to have a pet sitter come in, and all of that felt overwhelming, right? Because you have to plan all these pieces. The logistics all have to work. And we knew that the next trip would be based on when we could take time off of work. And we didn't want to be confined by that anymore. And the idea of selling everything and moving into an RV at the time seemed so far away. And in the beginning, we gave ourselves a lot of excuses.
Yeah.
We said, maybe we should, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
We said maybe we should wait until the leases are paid off. Maybe we should wait until the market's better. Maybe we should wait until we find different jobs. And it seemed like all of these reasons not to were also reasons that could be why we should take action right now. Yeah. And that was the idea started formulating in probably November, December of 2017. And then each month we seemed to do things to make it a little more possible. I remember on my birthday of 2018, which is in February, we actually went and looked at trucks, which was a huge step in building this vision, this idea of making this a reality, making the sell everything and move into an RV to travel really seem possible.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And I love how you were talking about the should thing, like you should let this happen or that happen, because I did a previous podcast episode with Sarah Stokes, and that was all about shoulds, because we get so wrapped up in what we think we should be doing. Things have to go in a certain way, or everybody thinks we have to do it a certain way. And in reality, we can make our own reality once you get down to it.
Absolutely. And the most beautiful part of all of this for me is that I realized that I could rewrite my American dream. My American dream didn't have to fit into a box of what everybody thought it should. It didn't have to be white picket fences and 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and 1.5 kids, or whatever that works out
Yeah.
to be. I don't know.
Yeah.
Certain one cat, one dog. It didn't have to be fit into this box. And we've been on the road for 4 years and have no regrets.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you're just recently coming out in a book where you write a whole chapter about this. So if everyone wants to check that out, we can continue on. But basically, we're talking about your chapter today and that move from being in the traditional house with the jobs into the RV. What were some of the emotions that you went through with that? Because I can imagine, I mean, it's exciting, but then when you get down to the real nuts and bolts of it, it's got to be pretty scary.
There were a lot of emotions. When I think back over the months, there was so much excitement, so much exhilaration, so much on the edge of your seat readiness to do this. But there was also a lot of fear. Would this work for us? Could we make working remotely possible? When my husband pitched his company to work remotely, they requested an internet plan. So we had to formalize how we were going to have internet for him to work his job. So these, little things that you may not think about could be the catalyst of whether this could work or not. I mean, if internet didn't work, neither of us can work because we both work remotely online.
Yeah.
So when I think back to the emotions, a lot of bittersweet. When you think about downsizing your house, when you think about selling the first piece of furniture that you and your partner and your husband bought together, selling, furniture that maybe somebody handed you down, maybe it's an heirloom piece. We still have a storage unit because there were some things I wasn't ready to part with. It's just a little storage unit, but
Yeah.
just a couple of pieces of furniture that mean so much. You're looking through old mementos, things that bring up nostalgia, and you think to yourself, man, is this all worth it? I'm getting rid of everything. And I remember saying to our real estate agent, she said, are you sure you don't want to lease your house and let somebody just pay the rent and pay the mortgage, pay you rent, you can pay the mortgage, and you can have a backup plan? And I remember saying to her, we don't want a backup plan. We want to make this work. And if it doesn't, we will cross that bridge when we get there. My husband and I always had this saying, we're going to go as far as we can see. And when we get there, we'll be able to see further. And that's how we've navigated this lifestyle. We go as far as we can see. And when we feel, we talk about it. Are we ready to settle down? We went through a big conversation a few months ago where our plans were for 2023. And it is all tied to what feels good, what intuitively feels like the next best step for us.
Yeah. And especially going through COVID, because you guys would have just been getting on that road before all of that happened. I mean, maybe that was a good thing in some ways because you were already prepared for working online. Your husband, I mean, good on him for, approaching his company and asking if that's possible. And I think with COVID, that's one of the benefits that has happened is that's opened up for so many more people. They get out of the commute, even if they're not living in an RV. But I know that it is an adjustment to go from living into a house to a small space. My husband and I did that about 5 years ago, sold our condo and moved into basically a tiny house. And a lot of people say, oh my gosh, like, how do you do that? But it's very refreshing to not have so much stuff. It's very, it just makes you feel so much more relaxed when you don't have so many things. So how did you guys do some research to figure out if you were gonna, love this lifestyle?
Well, we're both pretty positive, I would say. We look for the silver lining in situations, which has helped tremendously. I would say that making that our general attitude, our general mental state to look for the silver lining, to know that things aren't we have a choice, I guess is how I would word that. We did a lot of research watching other YouTubers that did this. And I remember saying to my husband, we weren't in the RV yet, but we were talking about having a specific platform dedicated to RV living because I didn't really want it to mix much with Veginspired when we first started. And I remember saying, one thing I'm not going to put out is a video on all the bad things about RV living. Mm-hmm. Because to me, when you go in knowing that you're going to use the laundromat, you're going to use the laundromat. That's just the way it is. So as we started to research what other people were doing, we were able to prepare ourselves for that. So, for the silver lining in those cases. So what's the benefit of doing the laundry at the laundromat? I can do 3, 5, 6 loads at a time. Right. Boom, done. I don't need, if I did it in the RV, it would take me weeks to get, our sheets washed because the machine's so small. It's just things like that. I joke with my clients all the time. I say, this is our dishwasher. My 2 hands are my dishwasher, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. It's one of those things where they're my dishwasher. Like I have to do the dishes. So I plan around that. I make sure that I'm more intentional about the foods that I use in the pots and pans and the utensils. And it makes for a simpler way of living.
Yeah, I find that too. I know we do have a dishwasher in our place at home, and even here we're spending the winter in Mexico. But because it's just the 2 of us and we eat so simply, it doesn't even seem like necessary to have because there's so few dishes. You probably go through a few more because you got to do food demos and you're preparing a lot more different foods. But really, when you live in a small space, you just don't have as much room. So you make it work a little bit more easily, or I can't come up with the right word right now, but that's okay. Yeah, it's just good to know to be prepared. What are some of the main things maybe that surprised you when you guys were, researching? Like, what was there anything you didn't expect that came up?
Through our research, some of the things that we were made aware of is the changing costs. Each RV park can set their own prices. It's not one standard. And so as you're making the plans to do something like this, you want to consider your budget. And obviously you can, with the world the way that it is, you can imagine that some of our more fluctuating costs, fuel, campgrounds, which, then they're paying electricity, also rise during, when prices rise. So being aware of that. The other thing that I would say that didn't come up when we were actually researching, but what we've found is we actually like to move slower. So when we first hit the road, we thought that we would move every week.
Yeah.
And what we had was this vision of us moving very fast around the country, seeing all these places. But the reality of our situation is that we work Monday through Friday. So we aren't going and exploring a national park during the week, most weeks. I mean, occasionally we'll take a day off, or, we'll leave work early or come in late. But for the most part, we explore on the weekends, which means that we can't travel on the weekend if we're also exploring. So we've personally found that we enjoy a slower, more laid back, more intentional travel route going to one campground and staying for a month and being able to satellite to different national parks instead of trying to move to the park campgrounds, which was the other thing that we knew when we were researching was the internet. But what wasn't clear was where you could get this decent cell coverage to supply your internet. And what we found over the course of the last 4 years is that it's all about the experience. So for us, it's okay if we have to drive an hour to a national park if the internet Monday through Friday works. Right. So that we can carry out our missions, our business, our jobs. So those were some, just some things that you may not think about. Some other things that I didn't think about were mail service, insurance for the RV and the truck. I mean, these are all pieces that as we researched and moved into that those next steps in selling the house and selling all of our belongings. But the research leading up to that opened up our eyes to, the different types of insurance we would need to carry, the different types of how we would declare domicile, where we would live as a state, and more of that versus simply just hitting the road and being a vagabond or a gypsy. I mean, there's some very intentional choices that need to be made.
Yeah, I think that's really important to know about that stuff. And deciding if you want to do, actual campgrounds, boondocking, however you want to do that. But I can see, because you're in it for the long haul, what's the rush, right? Like, why, it's a lot of work to pack up and move every time and get settled. So it'd be nice. I can see where you might want to stay in a place for a month or 6 weeks and get to know your area. Where is the laundromat and all your favorite stores and all that kind of stuff. So you sort of feel like you're in a community instead of just, packing up every few days and heading out. Then that would be a lot more work.
And it can be very distracting.
Yeah.
It's, as somebody who works for myself, which was my vision the whole time, was that I would travel the United States and work for myself. That was my goal.
Yeah.
But it is distracting to move. And, people often say to me, why don't you work in the car? Your husband does all the driving. Yeah. And at first I was like, oh, maybe I should. There's that should again.
Yeah.
But what I love about our travel days is that we get to spend time talking. There isn't another distraction.
Yeah.
It's just us in the front of the truck, talking away, looking at the scenery, looking at the, where we're traveling. It's just, I don't want to work on those days. Yeah. And so I've arranged my schedule so that I don't have to. But you can imagine if you're moving 2 times a week.
Yeah.
It can be very distracting.
Yeah. So this way you get the best of both worlds. When you're working, and when you're traveling, you're present. Because like you say, when you're traveling, especially through the US, there's so much to see. And if you're on your phone or working, you're distracted and you're missing all the stuff that's in between the 2 points, where you're coming from and where you're going to. I can see that. And you might see something really interesting. You want to stop and take a peek on your way over there. It's all part of the adventure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when I'm working, I want to be present for work too. And I don't want to be distracted by the guy that's cutting in front of us, or, just wanting to look at the animals in the field or the mountain views as we pass them. I want to be present in both places. And so having some boundaries around that allows me to do that.
Yeah. So we got a couple of minutes left. So while we're just kind of wrapping up a little bit, what are some main tips that you can tell people or share with them if they were thinking about doing something like this? Share a few things to tell them to really look out for. One of the things is you got to kind of enjoy being with the person you're with, because you're living in a small space and it is going to be an adjustment. So what other kind of things should they be looking for?
That's my number one tip. And I think, when you go into a decision like this, my tip would actually be to think about what you want this experience to be and then act on it. Do you want to be arguing in a small space? Do you want to be cramped inside, or do you want to be able to have an outdoor space? So when you arrive at a campground, is part of your habit to lay out the rug and set up your mosquito net or your enclosed area, set up your grill, setting yourself up for the lifestyle that you envision happening. And just know that it might rain and you might pull into a campground that's all muddy, and it's not always going to be perfectly as you envision it to be. But have a conversation with your partner, your spouse, whoever you're traveling with. I know we've met people on the road that travel with their siblings, that travel with their parents. Maybe it's a mother-daughter on the road, or a father-son or father-daughter, in different stages of their lives. Maybe it's you and your family. Maybe you decide to take your kids out of school and you road school them. There's a lot of people doing that. But have a conversation on what you anticipate, what you're looking to get out of it. Having those conversations allowed us to be aware that the realization, I guess is the word I was looking for, that we did like to travel slower, that we
Yeah.
didn't want to be in a rush, that we don't like to travel more than 3 to 4 hours at a time. So we have this expectation that we aren't traveling 7 hours in a day. We aren't unpacking. We aren't sleeping in Walmarts. Like, we want to be in a campground where we have full hookups, where we have, if we had to stay, if we needed help, because we were first time RVers. I mean, when we
Yeah.
hit the road, we'd never towed anything. My husband had
Uh,
never backed into an RV spot. I mean, this wasn't like we had
wow.
been campers our whole lives. I mean, we'd gone camping, but not
Yeah. Yeah.
ourselves. We bought the RV to live in it. So for us, it was very comforting to be in campgrounds. As we've evolved and gotten more comfortable, boondocking could be an option. So know what you expect going into it. And then my other piece of advice is, no matter what is deep in your heart, let yourself, give yourself permission to dream and see how you can make it happen.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, mentioning too, doing it with kids, because I know we live in an RV community in our little house, and there was a family that stayed there for a few summers that's traveling in their RV with 3 kids. They homeschool their kids, and she has an online business. So don't think that it's not possible if you have kids. No matter what your situation is, if it's something you want to do, take a look at it, and don't just throw it off if you don't think you can. If you can, if you want to, you'll figure out a way. And I know, we're wrapping up on the time today, Kathy, and it's been so awesome chatting with you. And I really want to talk to you about your plant-based business as well. So we'll have you back another day to chat about that. But I know you had something to offer for the listeners if they want to get some information about that.
Absolutely. So normally what I give away on podcasts is a free meal plan, which doesn't seem to fit necessarily the way that I'm living, but it might be something that just is intriguing to you, to see how I meal plan in a small house, and to see that, maybe it doesn't have to be that different, right? So, if I can eat plant-based or eat more plants is actually my motto. If I can do it in an RV traveling the United States, anybody can do it. So I happily would offer you all a meal plan with plant-based recipes, the grocery list, and how I fit it into a busy week. You can find that at veginspired.com/podcast. And if you do want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram at Veginspired, and you'll see a little bit of travel and a lot of plant-based and inspirational content. But I would love to connect. I love meeting new people. That's one of the reasons why we travel. And Cora, I just appreciate you having me on and letting me share my story.
Oh, and before we wrap up totally, I just want to ask you, because you guys have been to so many of the parks around the US, what's been your favorite national park?
So Glacier National Park in Montana is a top. Big Bend National Park was one of the most surprising favorites that we had. We really enjoyed that park. And then Acadia National Park in Maine is another top. And then I would be, remiss to not mention Bryce and Zion and Yellowstone and the Tetons. It's very difficult to pick a favorite.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome. That's such a cool idea, that what you're doing. So everybody listening, if that's something that you think they've been thinking about, you want to know more, I'll have all of Kathy's information in the show notes. So reach out to her, whether it's about RV traveling or about eating more plants. Either way, she's a wealth of information, and she's been there and done that. So she'll be able to point you in the right direction. So if that's something you've been looking at, do the research, check it out, because it's never too late.